Hey everyone, welcome back to my podcast. Today on Phyto Revival, we are going to address something that we all deal with, but I'm not sure if we all deal with it properly. Let's talk about what science experiments you may be harboring in your refrigerator. So there are many articles and opinions out there, but not everything is black and white. Just like you can eat an apple that has traces of cyanide in it with no problem, but if you chewed enough apple seeds, then yeah, bang, you're going to be in bad shape. Or like the rosemary, it's safe for an expecting mother to have rosemary chicken, but a medicinal dose of rosemary has what we call an emmenagogue effect, which has effects on the uterus and the menstrual cycle, which means that it can cause an abortion or a miscarriage. Does this mean that we have to avoid apples and rosemary at all costs? Absolutely not. You have to understand the range of effects of the world around you. Everything in moderation, which is what this podcast is designed to do, to give you information to make informed decisions. So let's dive in. Today, we're going to be talking about the leftovers and the proper way to store them and what is good and what you may be doing to actually harm yourself in your most common practices. According to the USDA, in short, you want to refrigerate your food within 2 hours of cooking, and you want to store it in an airtight container and consume it within 3 to 4 days. Or, if you don't want it in the fridge and you want it to last longer, you can freeze it for up to 3 to 4 months. Of course, like we mentioned, things may not always be so black and white, so I'm going to break it down just a little bit more for you. So if you have pen and paper ready, get ready to take notes. Rule number 1, cool your leftovers quickly. It's ideal to refrigerate the leftovers within 2 hours of cooking, or within 1 hour if the food is from an oven or is exposed to temperatures over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Rule number 2, use shallow containers. Store leftovers in small containers to promote faster cooling and prevent bacteria and growth in the warmer spots. If the container has a lot of headspace or air, then it's going to work like a cushion and it takes longer to get the temperature down. Rule number 3, like mentioned a moment ago, airtight storage. By using airtight storage or wrapping leftovers tightly, we can help prevent cross-contamination and help maintain its freshness. Also, human error is a thing. And yes, we forget things. Even though we think we can remember, we still forget them. So make sure to label and date. I found some amazing, awesome peelable labels off of Amazon. And I love them because they don't leave any residue and they're really easy to peel back off, but also they stick and don't come off easy. It has to have intention. This way, if you're really busy, you don't have to try to remember, crap, did I make this on Monday or was this Wednesday's science experiment? Make sure that you do consume the food within the recommended time frame. And by labeling what the contents are and the date, it will make sure that you are on top of this. Rule number 4, remember that you only want to refrigerate up to 3 to 4 days. Freeze up to 3 to 4 months. But then yes, it goes bad. Rule number 5, reheat it thoroughly. Stay safe. Ensure that the leftovers are heated to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit or 74 degrees Celsius to kill any bacteria that may have grown. If you are unable to eat the leftovers within the 3 to 4 days, you can freeze them to extend their shelf life, but don't wait till day 4 to do this. The sooner you get it in the freezer, the better. But again, remember that after the 3 to 4 months, the quality decreases. There are also some things you want to remember about freezing leftovers. Just like the refrigerator, you want to freeze them promptly. Number 2, label the container with date and contents. Number 3, making sure that you are using a freezer-safe container or wrapping the food tightly in a moisture vapor-resistant material. And number 4, just like the refrigerated leftovers, ensure that the temperature internally reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit and 74 degrees Celsius to kill the bacteria that may have grown. So those are kind of like the basics of the tip of the iceberg, but here are some other things you're going to want to consider. Bacteria can flourish in the danger zone, which is considered to be 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, which is in Celsius about 4.4 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. So it is crucial to refrigerate the leftovers quickly to stay out of this danger zone. Do not hesitate to discard leftovers that may have been in the refrigerator longer than 3 to 4 days, or if they've shown any signs of spoilage. Do they have an unusual color or an unusual odor, or is the texture of it looking a little off? Trust me, the money lost in the waste is still way cheaper than an emergency room visit. The average cost of an emergency room visit without insurance in the United States is $2,600. But this can vary based on location and time of the day and which services were actually received. But even with insurance, this visit can be $400 to $700 out of pocket. That's even after meeting your deductible. Again, this can vary significantly based on a variety of factors. So let's not risk it. Toss it. Now, even though that this is more of a blanket set of rules, specific foods such as seafoods, they decide that they need their own set of rules. They may have a shorter shelf life in the fridge or freezer than others. So fresh fish. So we're going to talk about seafood for a second. So fresh fish, it lasts 1 to 2 days in the fridge. Shellfish has the shelf life that varies between 2 days and 10 days. Seafood needs an internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 62.7 degrees Celsius, to consume. And when it comes to storing seafood, it needs to be in the refrigerated temperatures between 32 degrees Fahrenheit and 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which in Celsius is 0 degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius to 4.4 degrees Celsius. This prevents foodborne illnesses by avoiding that danger zone that we had previously talked about. Since we're on the topic of seafood, here's another bit of information that could be helpful. I'm going to actually post a chart on these on my Facebook page, and I'm going to try to get it on my Instagram. Just look up Phyto Revival LLC, and you should be able to find me. This way you can have it to save and print if you need to. But lean fish like cod and haddock, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm originally from Kansas, so I may not be pronouncing that right, can be stored in the refrigerator for 1 to 2 days and the freezer up to 6 months. Fatty fish, such as salmon and mackerel, can be in the fridge up to 3 days and in the freezer, if vacuum sealed, for up to 3 months. Shrimp can be in the fridge for just 1 to 2 days. But it can be stored at frozen up to 10 months. 10. Oysters, though, they're recommended for just refrigerator storage for 7 to 10 days. They are not recommended for freezer storage. If you want more information on dealing with seafood in particular and the safe storage, look up the National Fisheries Institute Seafood Storage Guide. It's a really good resource to be able to get more information. We have mentioned airtight storage. I know it is a habit here in the U.S. that we call every food storage container Tupperware, especially here in the Midwest, but not all storage options are created equal. So next, we're going to go over the pros and cons of plastic versus glass storage containers. Just another reminder that if you want the food, you do want the food to feel its container to help it cool faster to prevent the danger zone. So don't just put 1 spoonful of something in a gallon container, because that's shrink it down as small as you can around the food contents. The biggest thing is this. Glass containers do offer advantages like durability, resistance to stains and odors, and the safety when reheating, while plastic containers, often more affordable and lightweight, can be prone to staining, warping, and potentially leaking chemicals when heated. If you're going to use plastic, okay, and I understand because not everybody can afford the really nice glass storage containers, prioritize the polypropylene, which it has the acronym PP on it, and it has the recycling number 5 on the bottom of it, and high-density polyethylene, which has the acronym HDPE, which also has the recycling number 2. These are FDA approved and can withstand the heat from microwaves and dishwashers. When reheating food in plastic containers, chemicals including microplastics and nanoplastics can leach into the food, with some studies showing billions of particles released in a square centimeter of plastic. Like, just think about that for a second, how tiny a centimeter is and billions of particles being released into your food. And although polypropylene is considered safe, it too can leach chemicals, especially at high temperatures under certain conditions, though it is typically resistant to chemicals and bacteria. Polypropylene may leach a metal called antimony. Leaching of the chemicals may be accelerated by common use and stresses such as ultraviolet radiation, microwave radiation, and/or moist heat. And I think it's important to also note that the only way that plastic can biodegrade, like in the landfill, is with ultraviolet radiation, which is why it takes so long for it to break down. Make sure also that these plastics are BPA-free, because BPA is another chemical that can act as an endocrine disruptor. So in other words, it jacks up all your hormones, and it can be the cause of initiating cancer in certain individuals. As for the high-density polyethylene, it is considered durable and resistant of many chemicals. Some substances can degrade and cause leaks in the polyethylene, which is also the HDPE containers, and then certain chemicals leak into liquids. Chemicals like chlorine can also cause the HDPE to degrade over time, leading to cracks and eventual ruptures. And I do think that a lot of this too, a lot of the information I found, a lot of homes here in the US actually use this plastic for piping. So enough about the plastic for right now. We're going to touch base in just a second on another form of plastic we like to wrap our food in. We are now going to move on to aluminum foil and plastic wrap. While cooking with aluminum foil is generally safe, and it's important to be mindful of certain practices to minimize any of the potential risks, such as avoiding prolonged contact with acidic or salty foods and using it in high temperatures. Our body sees aluminum as natural. Aluminum is a common element found in the Earth's crust, and many foods, it also presents itself in traces naturally. So our body is not unfamiliar with aluminum. In fact, we can excrete small amounts of aluminum that we have absorbed from our food with our natural detoxification process our body does. But let's talk about things to avoid when using aluminum. Acidic or salty foods. Number 1, as this can increase the leaching of aluminum into the food. High temperatures, which is number 2. Think about your grill. Grilling season is coming up. It's March right now, so everyone is starting to get excited about lighting up that grill and really getting going, but man, it could be messy, right? So I've seen a lot of people line the grill with aluminum, but prolonged cooking at very high temperatures, in other words, temperatures above 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is equivalent to 204 degrees Celsius, may increase the aluminum leaching into the food. Number 3, never use aluminum in a microwave. It will spark, it will catch fire. Number 4, avoid using foil to line the bottom of your oven, as it can not only damage the oven, but it will also disrupt the heat distribution process of the oven. And number 5, also, do not reuse your aluminum foil, as it can become damaged and potentially contaminate the food. It is not safe to store food in an aluminum foil, as it can cause a metallic taste and pitting on the foil. While aluminum foil is recyclable and can offer some environmental benefits, it is not considered eco-friendly. And this is because of the energy-intensive production and the potential waste that aluminum foil has. Recycling does help mitigate some of these issues, but it's still good to know that it is not an eco-friendly product. Plastic wrap, on the other hand, is not considered eco-friendly either due to its non-biodegradable nature and its contribution to the plastic pollution that we already have an issue with, and its potential of the harmful chemicals that it has that can leach into the environment. To put this into perspective on the biodegrade and why eco-friendly is important, a standard plastic bag can take anywhere from 20 years to 1,000 years to decompose in the landfill. 1,000 years, one little plastic bag. And think about when you go to the grocery store. How many bags does it take to bring your stuff home? And how many of those you've thrown away in your lifetime? Biodegradable plastics can decompose much faster in as little as a few months to a few years, depending on the environment. Plastic wrap, particularly the ones that we use for food, it is made from a polyvinyl chloride, PVC, which I know many of you guys have heard the word PVC pipe or PVC plastic. This is what your plastic wrap is made of, and it can contain chemicals like BPA. And another one, let's see if I pronounce this right, it's Phthalates, PHTHALATES. Okay, I am not sure how to pronounce that, so do with that information as you will. But anyways, both of these are both endocrine disruptors. These chemicals will leach into the food, especially those with high fat content. So God bless the typical American diet and all of the plastic wrap we use to store our food in, as we are leaking more and more of these endocrine disruptors and carcinogens into our food by choice. So what are the best ways to store food? Well, honestly, the best alternatives are to use things like glass, stainless steel, and even you can look it up, you can make your own beeswax wraps out of pieces of fabric. On top of all of this, I also want to talk about something that's known as a forever chemical. Okay, and this forever chemical is actually what they cover your takeout containers in. And it's called polyfluoroalkyl, if I pronounced that right. But anyways, it is a grease-resistant packaging that holds your food from takeout chains. And it gets its name because it does not break down easily in the environment, nor does it break down easily in the human body. And this chemical can cause, ready for this? It causes immune system dysfunction, liver damage, kidney damage, developmental problems, and cancer. And just like the endocrine disruptors, they also disrupt your hormones. You can also get this exposure, the acronym for it is PFAS chemicals. You can also get these chemicals through drinking from water sources such as rivers and wells, and your nonstick cookware, some of your clothing, and firefighting foam. And you can bet this is in and are people that work in the landfills, they are very, very exposed to all these chemicals every single day. So protect yourself, reduce your use of nonstick cookware, clothing that is water resistant, because this is the chemical that makes it water resistant, and the firefighting foam. Drink filtered water, wash your hands frequently, and eat fresh, whole foods. Now, one last thing before we go. Let's talk about those eggs. You know, with egg prices going, a lot of people are reaching out to their local farmers for eggs. So, talking about eggs, washed, unwashed, let's really talk about how to consume them safely. I have been a chicken farmer for over a decade, and I've owned a storefront downtown. And when I first started advertising that I had chicken eggs for my store, the amount of people that would come in and say, you know, they would just last longer if you didn't wash them, like I was unaware of this phenomenon. And as I appreciate their eagerness to share some interesting information, for some reason the health department just kind of frowns upon selling poopy eggs to the public, especially in a public setting. So, if you are buying your eggs at a farmer's market or anything like that in the US, they have to wash their eggs to sell it to you in order to get licensed to sell it to you off the farm. So if you want unwashed eggs, you're going to have to drive to the person's farm if they want you to know where they live and pick it up straight from the farmer. So why do unwashed eggs last longer on the counter? And how long is an appropriate length of time to leave them out? Let me tell you, I have had people tell me anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months on the counter. So let's just dig right in and settle this right now. So as a general rule, unwashed eggs only last about 2 weeks. But for some seasoned farmers, they can say this can be up to a month. Unrefrigerated. I tend to do it about 3 weeks. Then after the 3 weeks, they need to go in the fridge. But if they're still not washed, they can actually sit in the fridge for up to 3 months or more, depending on how intact the bloom is. And if you are not sure if the egg is still good, it wouldn't hurt to do what we call a float test. What I do for a float test is I fill my sink or basin half full of water, at least 2 or 3 eggs deep, and then I put my eggs in question inside of the basin or the sink. What this does is a float test is a really good way to check for freshness of the eggs. As an egg ages, the air cell inside of the egg enlarges due to the evaporation of moisture and the absorption of oxygen through its porous shell. Now, that right there, porous. So because the shell is porous, that means it can also breathe in bacteria, right? So this increased air volume actually makes the egg more buoyant, causing it to float. So when you put the eggs into the water, if it sinks and it's kind of laying on its side on the bottom, yay, you've got a fresh egg. That means the air bubble is very, very tiny. If the egg is sunk to the bottom but is standing up and upright, this means it's an older egg but still safe to eat. Now, a floating egg, this means it's an older egg. It doesn't necessarily mean it's inedible, but I do usually toss these. I would allow them to sit 2 to 3 weeks, and then I put them in the fridge. And if I don't use them in this time, so if I don't use them within the 2 to 3 weeks, then I do store them in the fridge. Also, the important thing about the process is that if you can only really do this if the bloom is intact. Now, what is the bloom? You've heard me say it twice now, and you're probably like, I'm not understanding what this is. Well, the bloom is a clear, water-soluble coating that a chicken naturally wraps the egg in. And over time, the bloom will wear off. Think about this too. If your house has high humidity, it may shorten the lifespan of the egg sitting on the counter. If your hands are wet when you're handling them, this too can shorten the lifespan of how long they'll last on the counter. Never keep washed eggs at room temperature. So eggs in the refrigerator are good for at least a month. These are eggs that have already been washed. There's no bloom on them. There's no chicken poo-poo on them. It is just nice, clean eggs, already processed, ready to eat. Now, these are only good for 30 to 45 days in the fridge. But if you have an egg that you're kind of questioning, go on ahead and do a float test to give you a better idea on whether you want to try it out or toss it. Never leave cooked eggs or egg dishes. So this is once you've cooked breakfast. Don't leave your cooked egg dishes out of the refrigerator more than 2 hours or for more than 1 hour when it's fresh, like you just pulled it out. So you can't, any cooking temperatures over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, do not leave on the counter more than an hour. Now, today was kind of a long one. When I was doing a little bit of research to make sure that my information was as correct as I can get it, it kept sending me down a couple different rabbit holes. So I'm actually glad that we were able to talk about this, and especially for my kids. And I'm going to work on getting some printouts for right now that you guys can get. And maybe if I get enough interest, I might actually go on ahead and make some cute magnets that you guys can put on the fridge. So just let me know if this is something you would like. I would be happy to. I love to design. I like to be creative. So it would be kind of fun. Just don't blame me if some of my Irish Scottish punny humor gets put on the magnets because, life's life's already too serious. Let's make it fun. All right. Well, thank you again for joining me. I am sorry that this week was a little bit late. Kids were on spring break, so it's kind of hard to get a quiet moment in my house. So I do appreciate you guys coming and listening. And next week, I think I'm going to do the podcast on an herb called goat's beard. So I will see you next week and I will tell you all about that herb. Have a great day. Bye.